Good morning, students. Today's lesson in social studies is lesson 3, production and employment. In the last lesson, you have come across the terms per capita income and total income. Per capita income means individual income, while total income is the income of the country. That means total income can be also called as national income. The terms production and employment in this lesson are also related to income because the production and employment are the activities which generate income. And you know how income is important for individuals as well as for the country because development is measured in terms of income according to the World Development Report. So, today we will discuss about the topics like production, employment and also about the concept of GDP or national income. Students, what do you mean by production? Production is nothing but creating utility. You see, for example, a carpenter makes table and chair with some wood pieces. Earlier, the wood pieces were useless, but when they are made to table and chair, they become useful. In this way, the carpenter created a utility. So, in this way, he made production. And for this process, the person is required. So, he is engaged in this work. He is the employer. So, like that, in any works, when the people are working to produce some things, they are employed. So, in this way, employment is created by the production. You can see around yourself many people working in different jobs and professions for their livelihood. All these activities of livelihood are broadly classified into three sectors depending on the methods of production. So, in the economy, the economic activities or livelihood activities are broadly classified into three sectors. First one is called primary sector. If you see, this primary sector includes the method of production mostly involved by the natural resources like agriculture and related activities such as fishing, forestry, mining, where nature has a dominant role in the production process. The second sector is called secondary sector. It includes small scale or large scale industries. These are the different types of industries in the manufacturing process where goods are produced by the people using tools or machines. The third one is tertiary sector. It is also called service sector. Remember that the activities in the service sector do not directly produce any goods. They do not produce any goods directly, but they provide services. These services are very important for the development of primary sector and secondary sector. So, they help the people who are involved in the primary and secondary sector activities. So, in this way, though service sector do not produce any goods directly, its activities are very important. So, children, you can see the livelihood activities or different types of jobs and professions are categorized into three sectors: primary, secondary and tertiary sectors. The works done in these three sectors generate income. That income becomes the individual's income, that is per capita income, and also it is added to the national income. You can see the table given here indicates a data about how many people were employed in these three sectors during the period of 1972-73 and in the period of 2009-2010. If you see the table carefully, in 1972 to 73, 74% people were employed in agriculture or primary sector in India. If you take the case of industry, there were 11% people or 11% workers. If we take the case of service sector or tertiary sector, 15% of the workers in India were in service sector. And coming to 2009 and 10, 53% people were engaged in primary sector. If you see the data, the percentage of workers involved in primary sector came down from 74% to 53%. But at the same time, if you see the data of industry and services, if you see the number of workers or percentage of workers in industry increased from 11% to 22%, and in the service sector the percentage increased from 15% to 25%. You can observe here, while the percentage of workers in primary sector decreased, the percentage of workers in the industries and services indicated an increase. Actually, this is the sign of development. Any developed country like USA or UK or France, Japan, all these countries, we can observe that more and more people are engaged in industries and services, and less percent of people are in primary sector. So, in our country, we have seen the trend to increase the percentage of workers in industries and services. This is an indication that our country is a developing country. The below given pictures gives you an idea about different sectors. If you see the right side picture, it includes industry, where a person is working in industry in the manufacture of some things. The middle picture shows services, and the left side picture shows primary sector, the agricultural activities and mining activities. Now, as I told you earlier that the activities in the primary, secondary and tertiary sectors generate income. It is both individual or per capita income and also national income. So, national income is nothing but the total value of goods and services produced in the country within 1 year is called GDP, gross domestic product, and it is also called national income. For the country as a whole, we use the total value of goods and services produced in the country as the indicator of income for the country. The technical term to denote this value is gross domestic product. So, students, you should know that GDP, gross domestic product, or national income is the total value of goods and services produced in the country within a period of 1 year. And remember that in this calculation of GDP or national income, we should only include the value of final goods and services, not the intermediate goods and services. Let me tell you the example where you can understand clearly what is the meaning of a final good and what is the meaning of an intermediate good. Take a case of a farmer. He sells paddy to a rice mill owner for rupees 2,500. Now, the rice mill owner makes husk and rice by that paddy and sells to a hotelier for 3,600 rupees. Now, the hotelier makes idli and dosa using that rice and husk and sells the idli and dosa to his customers for a value of 5,000 rupees. Now, in this process, if you can see, the items paddy, rice and husk are intermediate goods, while idli and dosa are final goods. So, when we calculate GDP or national income, we should only include the values of idli and dosa given here as 5,000 rupees in this case. We should not include the values 2,500, which is the price of the paddy, 3,600, which is the price of the rice and husk, because in doing so we will be double counting. We will be counting the values of those goods which are used in making of idli and dosa. So it will make a mistake of double counting. Goods such as paddy and rice and husk in this example are intermediate stage goods. They are not being used by the final consumer. So remember that the goods which are used for the final consumption by the consumer, they are called final goods. They are not used for further production. They are directly used by the consumer. But when a good again used for further production, they are called intermediate goods. Intermediate goods are used as inputs to make the final good. If one will ever add the value of physical inputs in between plus the value of final goods, we will be double counting. The value of final goods already includes the value of all the intermediate goods that we are used in making a final good. So in the value of national income or GDP, the values of only final goods and services are included. So as you know that GDP or national income records the market value of all final goods and services produced in the country within a period of 1 year. But remember that there are many items that are not sold and purchased in the market. There are many works for which there is no payment is given. One important example is work done at home, like cooking, cleaning, organizing, bringing up children, tending to plants and cattle, etc. In most cases, these do not involve any monetary transaction and therefore remain outside the GDP measure. So children, you know that at home many works are done which are very important, like cooking, cleaning, tending to plants, bringing up children. So all these things are very important for those people who are working in the primary, secondary or tertiary sector. But these works are not paid. Actually, for these works, no money is demanded also. So these are the works whose value will remain outside the GDP measure. But remember that they are extremely important for the economy. Also, unpaid work done mostly by women, even today in India and across the globe, it is also not included in the value of national income or GDP. Now, while categorizing the three sectors, we have known that service sector does not produce any goods. They provide only services. Now, these services are of three types. First one is community, social and personal services. It includes public administration, that means different types of government offices, defense, military, education, schools, colleges, universities, health, hospital services, veterinary activities, the hospitals for the animals, media, library, archives, museums and other cultural activities, etc. So all these types of services include the community, social and personal services. Remember that these services are not free services. They are the services for which they are paid. The people are paid for these services. The second category in the services are finance, insurance and real estate. Services of banks, post office services, accounts, non-bank financial companies, life insurance and general insurance corporation, services of brokers and real estate companies are included in this second category. Third one, trade, hotels, transport and communication services are also included in the service sector. As we have known that the three sectors, primary, secondary and tertiary sector, includes many people who are employed, who are working in those sectors. So they are employed. Having a state where a person works for payment or having a work which is paid for is a situation of employment. So children, another situation where a person do not have any work or job, though he want to do the work, that is unemployment. You know, there is a situation which is in the middle of these two states, that is called underemployment. Underemployment is a situation where a person apparently works, but he does not work up to his full potential. So it also indicates that he does not earn the money up to his full capacity or full potential. Take the case of a small farmer, Gayatri. She owns nearly 2 hectares of unirrigated land, which is depending only on rain, and she grows the crops like jowar and red gram. All the 5 members of her family work in the plot throughout the year. Why? Because they have nowhere else to go for work. So you will see that everyone is working, none remain idle, but in actual fact their labor effort get divided. Each one is doing some work, but no one is fully employed, because actually that plots need only 2 people, but 5 people are engaged to work in that plot. So in this way, each one is doing some work, but everyone is actually working under their capacity. So this is a situation of underemployment. In this situation, the income of the 2 people is also shared by these 5 people. So you can also observe that the income earned is also in a low level. So where people are apparently working, but all of them are made to work less than their potential, this situation is called underemployment. This kind of underemployment is hidden, because here people look like they are working, but they are not working and earning up to their full potential or full capacity. In contrast to someone who does not have a job and is clearly visible as unemployed. If someone do not have a job, is clearly visible as unemployed. But the people who are underemployed, their condition is disguised. Their condition does not appear clearly. So it is also called disguised unemployment. This underemployment can also happen in other sectors. For example, there are thousands of casual workers in the service sector in urban areas. They search for daily employment. They are employed as painters, plumbers, repair persons and others doing odd jobs. Many of them don't find work every day. Similarly, we see other people of the service sector on the streets pushing a cart or selling something, where they may be spending the whole day but earn very little. They are doing this work, but they do not earn up to their full capacity. So you can observe that the condition of underemployment may be prevailing in rural areas, as well as this situation may be also in urban areas. Now let us observe the pie diagram, which shows the share of the 3 sectors in GDP. This diagram shows what is the contribution of each sector in generating the national income or GDP in the periods of 1972-73 and in the period of 2009 to 10. Let us first discuss about the period 2009-2010. If you see here a big green color part of the pie diagram, services 57%. But if you see the left side picture pie diagram 1970-73, you see the service sector part green color is small, it is nearly 35%. Now if you see the difference, the service sector increased in the year 2009 and 10 because many people who are in the agriculture sector before, they are shifted to services and industries. If you see in the diagrams, agriculture sector, it contributed 42% of the GDP in 1972-73. Now it is contributing 17% to the GDP in 2009-2010. Service sector, which earlier contributed 35% of the GDP, now it is contributing 57% of the national income. The industries, which contributed 22% of the national income, now contribute 26% in the period of 2009-2010. You should remember that it looks like agricultural sector is underperforming, but in fact the production in the agriculture sector improved and the value of goods and services in the primary sector also increased all these years. It is because our total national income multiplied number of times in those periods. The percentage shown is less. Now let us see the case of employment. In 1970-73, 74% people were employed in agriculture sector, and in 2009-2010, 53% people are employed in agriculture sector. While in industry, 11% people were engaged in 1970-73, 22% are in industries in 2009-2010. In services, 15% in 1972-73 and 25% in 2009 and 10. So you can observe by this pie diagram that the number of people or percentage of workers in the agriculture decreased and the percentage of workers in the industries and services increased, and it is an indication of a developing country. Now let us come to another type of categorization. Earlier you have seen that by the methods of production or by the type of output, the economy is categorized into three types, that is primary, secondary and tertiary sector. Children, there is another kind of categorization. It depends on the conditions of work. Depending on the conditions of work, the economy is categorized into organized sector and unorganized sector. So let us first discuss about organized sector. Organized sector covers those enterprises or places of work where the terms of employment are regular and therefore people have assured work. They are registered by the government and have to follow its rules and regulations, which are given in various laws such as Factories Act, Minimum Wages Act, Shops and Establishment Act, etc. It is called organized because it has some formal processes and procedures. Workers in the organized sector enjoy security of employment. They are expected to work only for a fixed number of hours. If they work more, they have to be paid overtime by the employer. They also get several other benefits from employers. They get paid leave, payment during holidays, provident fund, etc. They are supposed to get medical benefit, and under the laws, the employer has to ensure facilities like drinking water and a safe working environment. When they retire, many of these workers get pensions as well. People who work in the government or with companies or large establishments are all in the organized sector. So children, you can observe here that there are a lot of benefits working in the organized sector. So this organized sector is preferred most by the people because there are a lot of benefits, like you have seen that fixed working hours, paid holidays, pensions after retirement, permanence of the work, job security, and good working conditions, good facilities. So these all things attract people to join in the organized sector. So government jobs or government employments as well as employment in large enterprises, large offices, large institutions which provide permanent work, and all these facilities, though in the private sector, they are also termed as organized sector. Now let us look at the conditions of unorganized sector. The unorganized sector is characterized by small and scattered units which have remained largely outside the control of the government. So you can observe here that these organized sector units are small compared to the organized sector. In the unorganized sector, there are small and scattered units. They will remain outside the control of the government. So here rules are not strictly followed. Jobs here are low paid and not regular. So the workers in the unorganized sector get less payment, and also the jobs are temporary type. They are not permanent jobs. There is no provision for overtime or paid leave or holidays or leave due to sickness, etc. So you can see, compared to organized sector, in the unorganized sector, the provisions and facilities are very less. The employment is not secure. That means in the unorganized sector, the employer or the owner can remove a worker anytime. People can be asked to leave without any reason. When there is less work during some seasons, some people may be asked to leave. A lot also depends on the whim of the employer or changes in the market. So if you see, there are many things in unorganized sector which do not attract many people, but many people in India are engaged in unorganized sector activities for their livelihood. Let us observe a table which shows the percentage of people engaged in organized sector and unorganized sector. It also shows what is the contribution of organized sector in generating GDP or national income, and also what is the contribution of unorganized sector in generating the GDP or national income. Children, you can observe here that 8% people, only 8% people in India are employed in the organized sector, while the remaining 92% people work in the unorganized sector. Though the organized sector jobs are preferred most, but very less people are able to got those jobs. So many people work in the unorganized sector. That is, 92% of people work in the unorganized sector. to earn their income. And very surprisingly, if we look at the output produced by the organized and unorganized sector, while the organized sector generates 50% of the gross domestic product or GDP, unorganized sector also generates 50% of the national income or GDP. So you can understand here that both organized and unorganized sector generates 50% and 50% of the national income. Their contribution is same, half and half. So in this way, the production activities on the organized sector and unorganized sector are equally important for national income. So you have learnt in this lesson about different types of production activities, categorization of the economy by the methods of production and also by the conditions of work. You learnt about the benefits in the organized sector. You learnt about unorganized sector where the benefits or facilities are less compared to organized sector. You know